as we go through this, what my goal is to help you guys out today. Some of our clients, some aren't, might be landlords. Some people might be having a rental property in Southwest Florida. Some other people, you might have rental properties anywhere in the United States. And this is, God is going to help you guys rent your properties out no matter what. And this has to do with a lot of the systems that Red Fortress does. So, first of all, if you want, you can ask um, in the chat things for Parish. Parish can interrupt me, and maybe we can take questions at the end. But also during the presentation, Parish can bring some questions up while I'm talking. So this goal is to speak for about 30 minutes. It's a big topic, but I wanted to really narrow it down so that you guys can get information very, very quickly. Now, the reason why I chose this property is because there's a lot of pain in our market financially, specifically Southwest Florida. And it's kind of funny because, I was here back in 2005, 6, 7, and 8 at this very same desk. So I saw what happened with prices de-escalating, going down rapidly, and there are some things that are happening today that's similar. So I remember those days very, very vividly. And I've had local property managers coming and asking me, they said, Michael, what's going on with you guys? What are you doing? How you can help? I shared some of the information I'm going to give to you today, just a little bit of it. I shared with them. They really, really appreciated it. So when our clients come and say, hey, Michael, what's going on? Or to my property managers, what's going on with our rental properties and why aren't they're renting? I want to give you a little bit of factual information as to what's going on out there. Like Paris said, I've been putting out a lot of information, a lot of data in our sections on either on our website for our blogs or just to talk to other property managers across the state. Bloomberg News called me for their feature was dealing with real estate investing and property management and what's happening. So what I want to do today real quickly is talk about, what can I do to help somebody if they're a landlord or our clients, how do we rent people's properties sooner? Okay. And like Paris said, I'm a client of Red Fortress as well. I have rental properties. So for instance, uh, well, damning confession, but I have an eviction going on right now. Is that not true, Parish?
That is true.
Okay.
Yes. It's going swimmingly.
It's going right. So these things happen despite our best intentions. Things like this happen. To me as a landlord, and every single thing that I do, and I share with you today, we do for our clients, my properties, and I want to share that with other people, if whether you're a client or not. So, like Paris said, I've been doing this for over 25 years. It's getting closer to 30, but I'm going to choose to round down to 25 years, okay? And what I want to do is by the end of it, for those of you that are clients, you'll see actively what Red Fortress is doing to rent properties. And again, for people that are doing it by themselves, you're going to see what we do, a four-step process and so forth. But just a couple of things, first of all, before we get into it, is the background, a little bit of the topic. Again, what I do every day, like Paris said in Red Fortress, is that I focus on the trends. I focus on property management. A lot of people don't realize this, but I do property management only. So very often people say, "Oh, Michael, you're a real estate broker. You sell homes." I don't sell homes at all. I've never listed a home for sale unless it was like, say, for instance, my own. And even then, I use an agent to do it. I don't do sales. So I focus purely on property management, and that makes me somewhat honestly as of a unicorn. And the interesting thing is that since I've been doing this for so long, it's always amazing to me because everything works well for people until it doesn't. And like I said to you, I was back in 2004, 5, and 6, sitting around with people like Parrish and saying, geez, something doesn't seem right. Something doesn't seem right how people are buying properties for so much money and we can't rent it. And I said it back then, and I've been saying and talking about this trend in this area for the last probably, I'll say 6 months or more. And I said, things are starting to slow. We're starting to see things happen. And when we get into things like how can we change these things? We have here at Red Fortress 200 clients. We manage 450 properties all in this area. So we have a lot of data that we can get to help us through to see when things are picking up or slowing down because things can pick up in different areas while other areas are still slow. Okay. And so generally speaking, when we're talking about renting a property, even today and especially today, but always, it's always important for your property to look good or great Because if you don't do that, the tenants that are moving into your properties are not going to treat it normally any better than the way that you treat it as a management company or an owner. So there are occasionally people that come in and improve your property, but most of the time you're not going to have that. So all as we go through this, always remember that you want to have your property looking good. But like I said, don't over improve it. You don't have to do amazing things with your property just to get it rented. We're going to talk a little bit about what people are looking for from a tenant perspective and how to do it. So there's going to be kind of like three parts of this. We're going to talk a bit about data, where we are with rental properties. Then we're going to talk about some rental thinking, or what renters are actually thinking, generally speaking. And then we're going to give you a lot of tips on how to rent your property. Okay. So remember, and for some of you, if you're reading, newspapers, or you're talking to your neighbor and that, I always get this. I always get this. Oh, Michael, I heard of this person in the condo that rented his property 6 months ago for like $2,000 or whatever the case is. I always hear these stories. That some of them may be true. I don't know, but always remember that this is not a trend. That you could always have somebody that comes across that rents a property or buys a property for more than it's worth. Okay, so always remember that what I do as a property manager is that I look at the numbers. I look at seeing what's out there, and one person buying a property or renting a property doesn't make it for a trend. Okay, and the question is, as we get into the data, is how bad is it today? So when property managers are asking me, hey Michael, what do you think? I'm going to be on an expert panel here locally in the next couple of weeks, and then I'll be up in one in Tampa. So I track these things, including some parts of Florida, not just our area. And so the question I'd ask everybody here today, and you can put it in the chat, is as an owner or as a client of ours, do you think that this is the same back, if you were a client of ours back in 2006, 7, and 8, do you think it's the same economic factors as today? Do you think it's worse today? Or do you still think it's better today than it was back in 2006, 7, 8, and 9, when we were obviously going through the real estate depression? Because some people are comparing it. So if you want, you could put some chat, some thoughts in the chat. I'll have Parrish look at that, and I'm going to show you some data. So hopefully you guys can see a whole bunch of numbers on the screen. Everybody can see that okay? And I just wanted to go over this, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. If you really want to get into this data, and I'm going to be doing it again for the second quarter of this year, I spent about 15 minutes going through this data. But really, what's important is that when we're looking at data, people say things are bad, or that sort of stuff. Just to let you know a bit about this data, I took it from one major source. So this way I don't go around, and I don't go from like, as an example, going from Fox News to MSNBC to ABC to NPR to Newsmax, or whatever station you want to look at. I take it from one source because I'm looking for a trend. And one of the things that when we're looking at the data and how bad things are or how good things are in Southwest Florida, always want to look at, like, say, a 6 month period where we're looking at December of 2024. And what I did was, with our data, is I looked at it and I said, geez, um, it's regular for people to rent 3 bedroom homes. And so what I did was I broke it down into areas like Fort Myers over here, Cape Coral, Lehigh, Port Charlotte, and Naples, because each area has a little bit of a different feel to it. And again, when you look at these numbers, like say in December of 2024, from the same source, it said, like, for instance, there were 500 3 bedrooms for rent in Fort Myers. Now, those could be gorgeous 3 bedrooms on the water, huge 3 bedrooms, or they can be smaller ones. And then I broke it down for, if I was a consumer and I had $2,000 to rent a property, I had at that time 75 to choose from. Doesn't mean that they're glorious. It means that those are the possibilities open to me. And then again, if I had $1,700 or less, you can see it was a 26. Okay, so when you look at these numbers in May, you can see that it's very, very comparable, that some of the properties here in Fort Myers, there's more properties to rent for $2,000 less. And also, when you're looking at it, there's $1,700 a month or less. You can see kind of like that there's a couple of properties, but it's still kind of holding steady. Now, if you take a look, for instance, at a place like Cape Coral, you've gone from close to 1,000 to almost 1,300 properties in 6 months. So there's an extra 300 properties. So when people are talking about renting a property, the first thing is, what are the trends? What are the numbers? How many options do people have? And I'm not going to spend much more time on this, but I'm going to do it in another video where I break down a lot of other things, interest rates and things that are happening economically. But again, just looking at Lehigh, 559 to 727 properties. Okay, so there's a large influx, about 150 more properties in Lehigh compared to 6 months ago. And then Port Charlotte has been pretty steady until recently. And then Naples, again, there are a lot of properties for rent in Naples. They're just at a much higher rent, but they're not getting rid of their inventory either. Okay, so just wanted to go over that real quickly. Again, for you guys, I don't know if you have questions on that. Maybe we can take a couple of questions on it. I spend the time doing it a lot more and breaking down each segment and also more information. You'll see that coming. So if you're not involved, or you don't like numbers, that's fine. But if you do and you really want to get into more financial analysis, feel free. So, did you guys find this information a little bit helpful? We're trying to figure out where we are with the marketplace. In other words, if you had a rental property right now in Lehigh or in Cape Coral and Fort Myers, you're seeing a little bit of the competition of what's occurring. Okay. And again, if you want to get more information on this, you can go to our website. There's a blog section at Red Fortress where I post this type of analysis. Or as always, you can go to our YouTube channel and subscribe there, and you can get information there. So we good on that, guys? Any questions on that? Did you find that information helpful in some ways? Okay. Good. So let's go on. So here's a couple of thinking from a more of a resident perspective, and this is tough. Like I said, I'm a landlord as well, but I really want you guys to understand some of the thinking that goes into the rental mentality. And it's not something that we necessarily always want to hear, but it's something that we have to understand, especially as owners, landlords, and property managers. So we have to understand that there are a lot of things that renters don't care about. Okay. So the first thing that we have to talk about is current expenses. So if your mortgage goes up because you have an adjustable rate mortgage, an ARM, if your property taxes go up, if your insurance goes up because of the value of the property, um, unfortunately, the renters don't really care about it. They're there to rent a property. When you look at, say, brand new expenses, like we've had some of our clients all of a sudden get put into a different flood zone. And we had one client where the insurance went up like thousands of dollars a year just because of that one subtle change that the government did. Okay. If you're,
Michael, if you wanted to pause for one
sure,
second, Chris
absolutely.
had a quick question in there.
Sure, go ahead.
No, actually, I was just I
Oh,
had problems with my audio,
oh, there we
so
go.
Oh, you're
I
good.
just wanted to
Okay,
make sure
Chris.
that I was back online here. So
You're
my
Didn't want you to think we were skipping over you.
no
okay.
problem. I'll have
Thanks,
a
Chris.
question after you're done. So
Awesome.
Absolutely. And we'll do questions and answers. Maybe I'll do it at the end of this one as well. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
very good, thank you.
So, my pleasure. So, when we're looking at it again, like we're saying about flood insurance, assessments, like if we've had some people that have homes or condos in associations, and basically they've been given a $5,000 assessment for roof repairs or something like that. Again, while this is painful for us financially, it does not enter into the renter's mindset whatsoever. Okay. Again, outside factors for the property, such as elections or inflation or tariffs or financials. If I get a pay increase or if my hours get cut, all these things again don't matter to a renter. So when we're faced ourselves as a landlord with, man, my taxes or expenses are going up on a property, that's all right for the renter to say maybe understand, but ultimately it doesn't enter into the factors of renting the property. It's tough, it's painful, but that sort of thing is important to realize. Also, the media. So the renters don't care about the media unless it supports their position. So if all of a sudden the media came out tomorrow and said we have very few rental properties to rent, you'll be lucky to have them, and you should pay anything that you can to get into a rental property, they wouldn't care. They wouldn't care. The only time they'll care about what the media says is if it meets their position. So if some people are saying the market's good and some people are saying the market's bad, the renter will think the market's bad and I should have my way. Okay. And the final thing is, and this is really an important aspect. Again, like I said, I have even an eviction, unfortunately, for somebody that wasn't paying the rent. And that's unfortunate because we don't like to file evictions and stuff like that is our ego. So again, we might think that a property should rent for a certain amount. We might do that all day long. But unfortunately, what the renter really wants is value. And so all these things that go through our mind as an owner, a landlord, ourselves as property managers, we believe that a property should rent for more rent than it is. It doesn't enter into the renter's mindset. They're looking for value. And much like if they were looking at buying a car, it doesn't matter whether Ford put on a new assembly line or they invested in a new plant somewhere. All they're looking at is, I want to buy this car. How much is it and what value do I get out of it? Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? And it's really, really important. It's painful. Parrish and I, our property managers, sit around. We look every week at things and we're like, why isn't this property renting? How can we make it rent? We're going to get into the steps now, but one of the things we have to understand is, irrespective of the maintenance that we have to do on a property, the properties become vacant. We've had to spend money to make it rent ready. Once again, the incoming renter, for them, it doesn't matter. For them, it's about them getting value on what they can get for their money. And again, if they have hundreds of choices for a 3 bedroom in Fort Myers or Cape Coral, you can understand that the competition's pretty stiff. So, are we good on that? Any questions so far on that? Anything, Parrish? We good? Are we good? All
Olgu
right.
just pointed out HOA fees.
Yep.
Renters do not care about HOA fees.
Yeah, it's tough. And you know what? That's one of the things that when you're an investor and you're talking about buying in a condo or buying in a homeowners association, that's one of the big factors because, normally you have, say, for instance, your insurance, you have your taxes that vary. Maybe you might have your mortgage. Normally that doesn't vary as much, but then if you add that fourth element that association do quarterly or monthly, that's something that's not easy to certainly control. So let's talk about the four-step process that we do to rent properties. So the first thing is we're going to talk about pre-listing. What I mean by that is before we ever put anything online in that, we have to look at certain factors. Okay, so first thing we have to talk about is, are pets allowed? Okay, this is very, very important. The number one factor, I listed it at first for a very good reason. It has to do with whether pets are allowed on a property. And if you're in an association, typically most of them won't be allowed to go into the association. That's just how most of them are today. But for our other rental properties, most of our rental properties are allowed pets. And here's why. Over half, and I do mean over half, I've heard different statistics, 60% of renters have pets. So if you're in a down market and you're having problems, say, renting your property, and you don't allow pets, you might want to consider allowing pets. Now, this is kind of like an odd thing because a lot of the people think that when a renter has a pet, they've all heard horror stories about cat urine and you can't get it out, or the dogs eating through the cabinets, or stuff like that. And in our experience, and again, I've been doing this for a long time, it's very, very rare that I've seen a dog or a cat do such significant amount of damage that it wasn't handled by some type of deposit. Okay. So again, if you're talking about renting your property, having pets is a big one. If not, then you're losing over half the possible people that might want to rent it. Okay. Another thing, language barriers. So this is always interesting because people don't think of this, but people can go online and they can see photos, but the question is how do they kind of interact with people? So here, like for instance, at our company, people can come by and actually drop off an application. Now that's going to sound kind of like common sense, right? But there are a lot of management companies, even, and some association companies are a little bit like this too, where they limit their office hours or they don't want to deal with the general public just because it interferes with their day or that sort of like efficiency thinking. And for us, having people come by that, say, for instance, speak Spanish is very important because they might see something online and then have questions about it. The ads won't say be in Spanish, and so they're going to come by and deal with people that can help them out and speak Spanish. So there's language barriers. Most advertising you can do is not always in Spanish. Most of it's in English. But again, at least if you have the ability to help somebody with the application, have somebody come by your office or several offices in our case, and have people that can interact with them in their language, that's going to do a lot for it. Because if they see stuff online and they can't deal with a human person, and let alone deal with a human person that can understand them, that is definitely going to affect your application. So Parish helps out with that sort of thing as well, as
Yeah,
well as
just to throw out there too, yeah,
is
both our front desk girl is bilingual, and so are both of our maintenance. Both the people that handle maintenance are also bilingual, so they can help with a lot of the Spanish renters, applicants, things like that too.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So it's just, it's important. And again, so if people are looking at renting their properties, having that ability to translate is important. Another thing about pre-leasing is when you're taking photos, and this is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. Parish knows this, but a lot of managers and that are starting to do weird things with photos. Like they're starting to run it through like an AI filter. They're affecting the light to the point where you almost need to have like sunglasses to look at photos and that. And you look at them like I do and our staff, and it's almost as if it doesn't look real. And we're starting to see that more and more. And in an era of AI, um, being authentic is really important. And so you want to have, I'm not saying like take a photo that's miserable of your property, but even if you had something that showed that the lawn wasn't looking immaculate or something like that, is far, far better, honestly, than, using some kind of filter to make it look like you can golf on it. Okay. So that's another big thing about the pre-listing. Um, the power of the number nine for rent amounts. Okay. So when people will come to us and say, Michael, I want you to rent my property for $2,000 a month. What you're saying is that's fine, but the number nine, there's something about our brains that doesn't register nine the same way as it does most of the other numbers. So that's the reason why when you look at gas prices, you almost always see, depending on where you are, like 299, 3049, 3099, that sort of things. It's important that you have certain price points where if you wanted to rent a property for 1,500, I would suggest you don't do it. You put it for 1499, and it sounds better that way, and it does help rent properties. Okay, so $1 doesn't necessarily affect everything, but it's something like that's important. Um, so also, when you're looking at pre-listing rental analysis, okay, we spend a good amount of time on that, and I'm going to explain to you a little bit more at the end what we're going to do. But rental analysis is very, very important in this market for a number of reasons. Because one, you always want to be pretty accurate with when you're pre-listing and about to put it on the market. But also, it's important to see what's happening because this market is rapidly changing. Okay, so also. We can look at a lot of different ways to show property. So this is an interesting thing, and a lot of things changed after COVID. So when before, what used to happen is that we used to show properties in person, and we still do. Don't get me wrong, but we also have virtual lock boxes or electronic lock boxes where people will go in and they have to sign in, and they have to give their identity and their actual telephone number to be able to sign in. Okay, so we use that system as well. It depends on a couple of different factors. On, for instance, if it's in a gated community, you might not be able to do that because we still have to show up to let them through the gate. But in other properties, some people really like to be able to virtually, so to speak, go see the property without having a salesperson behind them. Okay. Another way also to show the property is through video. So sometimes we've been asked to show a video of the property, like actually being in there. That doesn't happen too often. That would be for somebody that's out of the area, but we have even done that as agents at Red Fortress. Okay. And then again, I'll take questions as we get towards the end of the step. And then also a system for callback. So one of the things that we do, we have software where when people say, like, I'm interested in this particular property, and let's just say that they don't go to see it, they just show interest. Is there a system for people to get back a hold of those prospective clients? So in a down market where you have lots of different choices, sometimes you have to try to cut through the noise, the marketing noise, and get right through it. And so that's what we also do here at Red Fortress. We send texts to people, call them up. Sometimes the information might be a little bit off, or they might might give us the wrong phone number or something like that. Like, some people are a little bit leery of being, a victim of fraud, which happens and stuff like that. So that type of system is very, very important. We do rent properties doing that. Also, you can contemplate having a move-in special. And even having it date sensitive, like if you move in before the end of July or the beginning of July, you'll get half a month off. Okay, so there's no doubt that there are move-in specials happening right now. I saw one in Lehigh the other day, a three-bedroom, two-bath, two-car garage, $1,700. I know the property manager, and the second month was free. So this is where people start to, if they're not doing a lot of these things, you're going to see like apartment communities also are always giving out specials. So you can also contemplate doing some type of move-in special besides lowering rent and giving it a date. And then a final thing that we try to do as well here that I would recommend to anybody doing as landlord, and that is also try to pre-market an occupied property. So when we know that things are coming to a close, let's just say that somebody's moving out in June, very often when things are going well, we know for a fact that they're leaving it at the end of June. We're going to start looking at starting that procedure, finding out if somebody else might be able to rent the property, and also testing the market in terms of what we think we might today rent the property for, as opposed to when, say, that tenant could have rented it 3 years ago, and it might be a totally different amount in rent. So, okay, so right now, are there any questions right now? Do you see how some of these factors can certainly affect your listing? Any questions, Parrish? Want me to answer? Are we all good? I see some.
I put the possibility for unmuting. If anyone wants to unmute themselves to ask a question, you can just click that unmute button.
That's right. I saw that. Holger, thank you. Yes, 1099s, right? That's why, in some ways, that's why they have nines all the way through it. And you're right. Very often, people are looking at getting all the amenities, but they don't want to pay for it. You're right. So, and also somebody wrote, humans can be much worse than pets. That is, that is for sure. That is for sure. And if you guys want to put as well, so far in the step one, is there something that struck you as a big takeaway in terms of, what we do if you're a client of ours, or, if you're a landlord, maybe something that I've given to you that you might want to try and do. So it's important because a lot of the people think that, I was talking with a client yesterday, just come aboard, and I said to her, "Do you have any questions about how we market?" And she says, "No, I figure that you probably market like anybody else. You put it on the internet, and just kind of like realtors do, and that sort of thing." And in actuality, no, we actually do a lot more than that. But I appreciate her sentiment, because how realtors market the property is different from us, and our the way that we have individual agreements set up online, which we're going to talk about right now, is much broader and much better than that. So moving on to
Michael
step number two.
touched on
Yes,
this really quickly, but I'll throw in, the
please.
application, the software we use for the application process, it's called Tenant Turner. And he touched on this. So whenever anyone applies online or just starts to even view a property, they upload their ID, they put their email, they put their phone numbers on there and everything like that. So if your property manager sees that your property is having trouble renting, they can go back into Tenant Turner, pull up your property, and basically see anyone who's even touched that property through our website, through the online, through Tenant Turner, and we can see. So our property managers, Don, Daniel, everyone, they'll go in there when they see a property that's been on the market for a while, and they'll actually click through there, and then they can go out of there. They can just manually contact those tenants, say, "Are you interested? Did you see it? Was there something you didn't like? Was it a rent issue? Was it anything like that?" So the property managers can open that dialogue because we collect that data on all the applicants. So
It's important that that we do that system is good. If you don't, you're having leads go out the window. And again, there's a lot of things that where people can look at a property, click on it, show some interest, and then all of a sudden they look at another one, and they might have not have made a decision or an action for a week, and then all of a sudden they get a call back from us or a text, "Hey, by the way, are you still interested in 123 Main Street?" And that sort of thing. And it can jog them and go, "Oh yeah, you're right. Like I forgot about that property." So that's really, really important. And I got a chat comment. about whether I would recommend raising rent from Ben. Would I recommend raising rent at renewal if you're still below market price right now? Great question. Okay, so part of this has to do with, in part, like how far below you are the market rent right now, and then also um, where does the current resident reside in terms of their ability to say pay a higher rent? Okay, so what I mean by that is, let's just say that you've had somebody there for 5 years and they've been great renter, but maybe they're struggling financially. Uh, I would probably say to you, thinking in your shoes, Ben, that maybe what I do is, could I raise the rent, say $50 or $100, and if that in and of itself is going to cause legitimately the tenant to move out, then obviously not do it. But if it isn't, then sure. Anytime that you can raise rents, it's beneficial. There are two ways to look at that. You can either raise them every year, or you can raise them once every couple of years. So the way you could look at that as well is, if raising the rent $25 a month isn't going to change your lifestyle, then some people say, why bother doing it? Maybe you wait for a second year and raise it $50 a month. So hopefully that, Ben, that answers your question. So for us, looking at any type of renewal, we look at a couple of things. We look at, first of all, is the renter paying on time? And what I mean by that is not if they pay every time by the first, which is nice, but do they pay within a timely fashion? Even if they pay on the fifth day of the month, that's fine, or the seventh, that sort of thing. So do they pay rent on time? Do they take care of the property? Are there a lot of maintenance issues that are occurring? And if there are, then it's probably a good time at renewal to not renewal. And the third thing is whether, how can I say this? Whether they cause a lot of problems. So in other words, if they're not allowing the maintenance people to come in to do property because their AC's out and you can't ever get them together, and they're always complaining and that sort of stuff, and they're just creating a lot of angst when we're trying to actually help them out. And we do have a lot of those, or a couple of cases, I shouldn't say a lot, but that's another situation. So when we look at those, as long as Ben, those factors aren't entering into it, then we look at raising the rent even in a down market. So if you're $400 below market rent right now, even in a down market, then raise it what you would think it should be, and see what they say. So great question. Okay, so let's talk about online marketing real quickly. All right, so first of all, when we do online marketing, if you're a landlord and you don't have like unlimited resources, okay, you want to correctly choose the website for your property. So for instance, if you have a home, you might not want to put it on apartments.com, right? And it sounds, kind of crazy, but if you're doing it yourself, you want to choose the right website. And it's funny because people say, oh, Zillow, this, Zillow, that. Zillow is not the largest rental website for the number of rentals anymore. Okay, so things are always changing. We do that at Red Fortress. We advertise on a lot, like dozens of websites. Okay, but first of all, make sure that you choose the correct site for your property. Again, if it's a home, maybe not put it on apartment.com, and if it's an apartment, maybe not put it on homes.com as an example. Okay, and then the second thing, it's very, very important for people to advertise with the name. Now, it's interesting because a lot of the websites over time, what they're focusing on is the property, and then the person actually doing the work, like the listing, say Red Fortress, they're making the name smaller and smaller. What they're trying to do is just have people focus on the property and not even the person that's doing it. So this is unfortunate because the people that are trying to rent the property out, say, like in Trulia and that sort of thing, they're trying to get their name out and not so much the individual agent or property management company like us. Okay, so this becomes very, very important that when we do online, marketing, to have your watermarks there. Very, very important, because this way, even if they can't, like, they have to scroll through all the text of it and the number of bedrooms and that, and they still can't find the information of who's actually renting it out. That's where the watermark will come in. So you'll see, like, Red Fortress Property Management.com, you'll see it on all of that for several reasons. One, for fraud. It's much harder to remove the watermark. They can, but it takes more effort for them to remove the watermark, to put it on fraud sites like Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist than that. In fact, you often see management companies or national companies saying that they do not advertise in these areas. And if you see it there, it's fraud. So People have to read it to see that, but it's important. So a lot of this occurs in the backdrop. So watermark's very, very important because it prevents fraud and also identifies you as a legitimate company. So if somebody's looking through the ad and they see Red Fortress Property Management, they can go to our website and they know that we're legitimate. And you'd be surprised at how much people are getting scammed today. It's terrible. Also, have a local number to call. So we have like a 239 number. So you'll see this all the time. You'll people, 561 area codes or 787 or whatever it is. And the problem with that is that people are wondering whether the property manager, the agent, or the landlord are local. And if so, are they going to be attentive to their needs, like when it comes to maintenance and so forth? And there are a lot of professional renters that love those numbers because if they think that the person is, say, living in Miami and trying to rent out a property, they would love to get into the rental property because now they know that they're not being supervised in any way, shape, or form. Okay. Another aspect, and this is something that I'll just mention briefly. Maybe I'll do a topic of it in another video, but there's a lot of issues going on with what they call closed or private ads. And they're coming under fire by a lot of the major online sites. And what I mean by that is, let's just say I have a rental property and say I'm a landlord or I'm a real estate agent and I offer my rental property not to a national website but like a local one. So let's just say I'm with an investment group that does it online, like fortmeyerrentalproperties.com. Well, people like Redfin and Zillow are coming out against that, saying, no, no, advertise on our sites. Otherwise, if you do it on the smaller site, we're going to block you. Okay. And it's their way of trying to control the game. And there's lawsuits going on right now in different markets regarding this. So just again, understand that this is happening, sort of get into the weeds, but this is what I do. So that's important to see. And then as always, once the advertising is on, check your listings to see what it looks like. Okay, because they can change things. When we update something on our website, it doesn't automatically get changed to the other websites, the aggregate websites, the 20 to 30 people that we go to. Okay, so always take a look at that. Are we doing, Paris, any questions or should we get to step
Nothing
three?
new popping up. I'm gonna unmute you guys if you want to ask a question there to Michael.
Anybody else?
You can just click that unmute button.
All right. So just to let you know, we're getting close to the end. So we're going to talk a bit about the application process. Okay. And the application process, most people don't consider this because this is actually part of renting your property. And people say, well, that happens afterwards. No, actually not really. So the first thing is let's talk about the cost of application. So some people are looking at it and going, well, maybe what I could do is give a discount on the applications in the down market. And you can do that very easy as a landlord. For management companies, that is very, very hard for us to do because they can say that we're not following federal guidelines. Okay. As well, when we're looking at the application process, okay, HOA application fees. So what happens when somebody comes to say to us as Red Fortress and they get approved? And then they want to go to a condo association and the condo association says, well, you have to do our application process now. It's $100 per person, as an example. It could be more, it could be less. And then also you have to pay an extra $500 for a security deposit. Do you think that that can have an effect on whether that property rents or not? So these are the types of things that associations are doing, and it makes it very, very difficult to rent out. So maybe as an owner, you can look at that and try to minimize that impact. Okay, I know some property managers, they won't even manage in associations for various reasons, and that's one of them. You can also look at adjusting the lease term. So let's just say that somebody comes to us and says, wow, I like this 3-bedroom 2-bath pool home in the Cape, and I like the rental amount. I plan on staying here for a couple of years. Maybe I can sign a 2-year lease or something like that. Or you could also look at that as a leverage as well to setting up and renting a property. So we look at that as well. And then some people have talked about easing some screening criteria. Like they talk again about, well, maybe I won't be so difficult on credit, or I won't be so difficult on eviction history, even or criminal. And again, for us, that aspect. First of all, we always look at a case by case basis. For a lot of reasons. For instance, looking at credit. You have aspects where people have been divorced. recently and their credit's been affected. So we look at this, but generally speaking, you shouldn't necessarily ease your criteria just because it's a down market, because there's a reason why you have a criteria to begin with in the first place, right? And then another aspect is applying on websites. So a lot of these websites like Zillow, they're like apply instantly and that sort of thing. And honestly, these types of systems, I would really recommend against this for a couple of reasons. One, the applications that say other companies run, they're all automated. They don't go through something like what we do, which is it takes a little bit of time, a little bit of discernment, a little bit of investigation towards things, and that's really, really important. When you're talking about background screening, and a lot of these other companies like Zillow, you apply online and they spit out the information. They're not going to find out whether there's like an eviction that happened yesterday in Lee County or Charlotte County or in Pensacola, like the service that we use. Okay, so again, when you're looking at this, like, oh, apply instantly, it sounds great. That's possible that you might rent the property faster because somebody's looking at getting through that process faster, and that might appeal to some renters, but you're also going to attract professional renters that literally know that they're in the process of being evicted and they don't want you to know about it. So if you go to that type of service, you're not going to find it out. So just watch out for that too. And then again, when you're dealing with the application process, like what we work on is fast acceptance or denial. We want to let people know where they are so that this way we don't lose that fish, that person that might be a great renter. So we want to make sure that things are working the right way. And say yes, it's great, or we need some more information before we accept or reject you. Can you get that information to us shortly? And again, in a down market, anybody that applies, we really want to consider. We don't want to put in people that aren't qualified for it, because nobody wants to have an eviction. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we get back to them quickly. So, all right. So having said that, so when we look at this, whether you're a landlord or an owner or a client of ours, again, how you choose a system is really important. And some of these automated systems that you hear about, I'm just going to let you know that they don't work out. Okay, so if you're a landlord and you want to use them because you don't have means to get like background screening information like we do, I understand it, but our background screening is second to none because it accesses dockets, which you can't get through, say, Zillow. Can let us know whether people pled guilty to lesser charges and all this sort of thing. That's very, very important when it comes to legality and fair housing and that sort of thing. So, any questions on that? Does that make sense, guys? If we're moving on to the last stage. All right, this is fast and furious, but hopefully you guys are understanding what you can do to rent properties and also what we do as clients. So let's talk a bit about other marketing real quick. So everybody always talks about online marketing and so forth, but that's not necessarily always the case. So one of the things that we've been effective at doing for many, many decades is dealing with third-party groups. And what I mean by that is you can look at people like HUD and Section 8 programs, which is fine. They have a tendency to change their programs, and sometimes they're much better than other times. But you also have other agencies that we've rented out places with through veteran organizations or some type of religious groups like say something like St. Vincent de Paul or St. Matthew's Home, where they might pay for a security deposit for somebody to help them get into it. So again, when you're looking at these groups, you can always look at third parties, not just online marketing, to get qualified renters. Also, you can look at putting flyers out to certain retail places like flea markets or grocery stores where they'll put them. You can put them in a lot of different areas. Again, you have to check with the people that do it, but you don't want to have a bad name or reputation out there for flooding the market with all kinds of flyers. But at the same time, like we work at doing that. We work with a lot of large agencies here in Lee County to get that property rented. And then also keep in mind that the rent's always changing. So we talk about like online marketing, but again, we're going to talk about some final steps here, but you always have to be looking to see what's happening in your marketplace. And that's what we do. Like Paris says, we have a lot of software and a lot of different systems at our disposal that's showing us how attractive a property is and getting feedback all the time in real time. And so our property managers can text people. But again, we also have to look at the rent and whether it's changing around with the other properties near us. And then also we talk about rent signs. And we put rent signs out on some of our properties. And I kind of compare this like store buying versus Amazon. A lot of people today are used to buying on Amazon or going online to eBay to get stuff, and they don't bother leaving their home. And rental properties are a lot like that. In actuality, some people will just look online. So if you put a rent sign out, um, it doesn't necessarily mean that anybody's going to see it, quite honestly. But maybe, I don't know, 5% of the people might see that sign because they drive the area, they want to live there, and they go, oh, wow, there's a rental sign for Red Fortress. I'm going to call the number right now. And again, how do you retrieve that number? Do you answer it and take care of them? That's very, very important. Like we really focus on that as well. But again, putting out for rent signs can be helpful. But again, the area is also very, very important. So you can have people literally that once you put a for rent sign out, okay, um, excuse me, once you put a for rent sign out and you're looking at it, the area does matter because some people could say, oh, wow, this property is vacant and I'm going to do something to it. So back many, many years ago, like in 2008, 9, and 10, I mean, we literally had people breaking into homes that were being worked on that were vacant. We even put stuff out like shoes and stuff like that to prevent people from trying to break in, but people would steal appliances, all kinds of things. So again, if your property is remote, you might not want to put a for rent sign out there because it's advertising that the property is vacant. Okay, so just I also saw one person talking about drones, and they were talking about having drones to rent their property. I'm not sure how that would help if you wanted to see an aerial photo of I don't know, the roof or maybe the backyard or something like that. I thought that was a slightly odd. We don't use them because I don't think that, quite frankly, they provide a lot of value to the average renter. But maybe you might want to try and get some different photos with drones. And then another thing that you might want to consider, and we do this as well, is ask the current renter for a referral. So if somebody's leaving their lease early, we definitely work on that and saying like, listen, do you know somebody that might want to rent the property as well? Help us help you rent this property if you're doing an early termination on a lease, that sort of thing. That's how we do pre-leasing in our company, and I know that we've rented probably over half a dozen properties already this year that way. So this way our clients don't end up losing any rent money. So again, you can always ask the current renter if they know somebody that might be interested in doing that. I know apartment communities try and do that as well. So here are some final thoughts, and then I'll take some general questions in that. So first of all, if after you're doing all this sort of thing and time is going on, now it's time to lower your rent. Okay. So a lot of people wait, unfortunately, for the market to change to where we'd like it to go. So in other words, when I have my vacancy coming up in the next 3 weeks, I have to look at it and say, well, what do I think the rental market's going to be? All that sort of stuff. And then what we do is we work on getting that out there. And if that rent doesn't work, if the renter doesn't see the value in that rent, then what we're going to do is we're going to have to look at lowering it. Okay. And I want to give you an example of lost rent and what it can do. So you don't have to be a mathematician on this. A lot of people get a little bit scared. Maybe not you guys because you're in real estate, but and real estate investing. But for instance, if you have a home on the market for $2,000 a month, and you put it on the property on the market, and you say, okay, I want to rent it. I think it's worth $2,000 a month, and you don't adjust the rent. And let's just say that 2 months go by, and somebody finally decides to rent it. Understand that basically through lost rent, you've lost $4,000. And if you divide that by 12 months, the term of the lease, that meant that if you started renting that property at just under $1,700 a month, okay, then you would come out better financially. So that's what I mean by, as a landlord, I know that when I'm working with my property managers to rent my properties, I have to look at that lost rent as a very key category. I want the property to be rented, and I want it to be rented to somebody who's qualified. And for me, I'm very conscious of how long that property is on the market because I don't want it to be sitting for 2, 3, 4 months. And unfortunately, where we get back to the earlier presentation, we're like, oh yeah, but I paid this amount of money for it or this or that. I get all that, but again, remember, ultimately the renters don't care. And so we've had some people that like say, well, I'm either, if I don't rent it at this amount, I'm going to sell it, which is fine. But at the same time, realize that for a renter, it doesn't matter to them if you sell it. They're looking at what constitutes great value. okay, to them. So keep that in mind. And, another interesting story, we got a call from somebody who going to be managing their property for, and they had another agent that was, trying to rent out their property. And I went to their website. I couldn't even, it took me 5 minutes to even see where the rentals were. And when I looked online to see if I can find like what was renting for and that sort of thing, I could not find it. Okay, so there's a lot of things, unfortunately, where people don't focus on property management. They can get distracted with sales and then end up not even, unfortunately, putting it on the market. Okay, so always watch out for that. Again, uh, check your listings that are online. Okay, so a couple of different things. What to do now. So first thing is, if you're a landlord, apply this knowledge to your rental property. If you're a client of ours, great. You're getting some key insight as to how we actually rent properties. To give you an example, Red Force has already rented 10 properties this month. Okay, we did 12 last month, so we are renting properties. The question is again, it gets back to that value for the renter. Does the renter see value in your property? Whether it's the rental price, it's new, it's got a backyard, it's on the water, whatever they're looking at, it's near a golf course, it's not near a golf course, it's in the middle of nowhere. This is the type of thing that people want. So again, apply this knowledge. For those of you that are on that don't work with us, or even those of you that do are our clients, we always give an offer for people that we're going to do a free rental analysis for them. If you're a client of ours, this normally happens. But let's just say that you're getting ready for a vacancy. Talk to your property manager. Here's the difference between what we do with our rental analysis is that, first of all, most analysis that you do are third party. Okay, so they'll go to Trulia or Zillow. By the way, Zillow's rent analysis is not accurate. I hate to burst people's bubble, but that's the reason why you have companies that do this for a living. And we track all of our rentals and how long they've been on the market and so forth on a weekly basis, if not more. So when we look at a rental analysis, that third party is going to give us an idea, and then we go into our 450 properties. We talk to the property manager or managers that are in that area, and we say, hey, what's happening in Lehigh? What's happening in Bonita Springs? Are things renting faster or slower right now? And then that's when our property manager will tell you, this is what I think we can rent it for. So again, for those of you that if you're curious as to what you think your property can rent for, great. And again, if you're one of our clients, you can also ask your property manager to do that for you. And then again, for those of you that are landlords, that aren't our clients, if you see that there's a lot more to property management than actually renting out their property, and there are a lot of different things that are going on even legally. We just had a major change in Florida law. I posted it on our blog about electronic notices, electronic legal notices to renters, and also how they can give notice to us. It's more electronic now if they choose to do so. So I won't get into that, but there's a lot of laws that are changing, and we're always trying to affect change for the better of our landlords, but also for the betterment of our renters as well. Because if we do a great job at managing the properties and limiting the issues that we have for our clients, that's obviously going to be much better for renters. So, and having said that, I'll take questions now. But if you want, as always, I'm available. Here's my email address: mike@redfortresspm.com. Mike@redfortresspm.com. And again, if you have questions on this, if you have topics that you want me to talk about, for those of you that I see there's some of our clients, awesome to have you. I know that I don't often have a chance to speak with you guys because I'm working on things, but if there's topics like this or other things that you want me to talk about or address, great. I'll be doing more Zoom sessions and blog videos coming in the near future. So if you haven't checked out our website for blogs, you can do that. And having said that, thank you for attending, and I hope that these ideas help your property rent faster. I know that we incorporate them and we've had great success. Is there anything, Parish, questions that I might need to answer, or anybody that might want to ask a question before we leave?
If there's anything, guys, I am unmuting you. So if you want to unmute, if you had any questions or you want to type it into the chat, Michael can answer anything for you.
I have a question, but I could take it offline. It's not related to our topic today, which was very beneficial, by the way. Thank you, Michael. And it was great.
My pleasure.
So,
Thank you.
my question, I could take it offline if that's
Okay, I'll tell you what. Well, why don't we see if anybody else has it, and then what I'll do is if people don't have any questions, great. Chris, I'd be happy to answer a question offline.
okay.
It's great.
I'll wait to see if anybody else
Sure,
chimes in. And
Yeah, I had a question.
sure,
Um,
please.
Yeah, would you, we are one of your clients. Would you
Hi,
ever
Rose.
reduce the rent if you thought the tenant, was going to move out because you were looking for a cheaper place? You would
Oh,
re
great question. Great question, Rose. Absolutely. I'll give you an example personally, because again, I'm a landlord. Um, I remember, and Parish knows, I've said this a couple of times in my staff meetings. I have a rental property right now that's on the market for, like, say, it's renting for $1,200. I remember back in 2009, okay, that I said I will not rent it for lower than $395, the same property. Okay, so the thing that occurs is that we're not like obviously saying that you should always lower your rent, but here's what happens. Rose, there's a couple of things that happen. First of all, for the renter, one of the big things that we do, and if you've noticed with our company, even in social media, there are a lot of positive reviews that we're getting for our maintenance. And I know that as a landlord, for me, maintenance is kind of like a bittersweet thing. I know that I have to do it to protect the property, but at the same time, it's also an unexpected expense. So, it's good that I'm protecting the property, but I don't want to have too many of them, right? For cash flow reasons. But from the renter perspective, that creates a good experience for them. So when 10 months from now or 6 months from now, when they come up for renewal, Rose, what happens is that they're going to remember that. They're going to remember, hey, did Red Fortress take care of me? And they don't care whether you or I or anybody else owns the property. Who they're really dealing with is us. So we really try to work well, and first of all, with the maintenance aspect, because that's the biggest thing that they're going to ask. Besides, the next question is, what are you going to rent my property for? And at the renewal. And so for most people right now, Rose, what we're doing is that some people, like Ben was saying, we might raise the rents depending on where it is in the market. Typically, that happens when we've had a tenant there for a long time. They've been there for 10 years and maybe we haven't increased it like the market, because the market has a tendency to do this and then come down. But let's just say that they're a newer person. We've renewed the rents at the same level for I don't know, maybe 25% of our rental properties, that we're basically, some of our rental rates are just like flat. I know that I'm going to be doing that with a couple of my rental properties too, because I know that the rental rates have come down, and I'm not going to increase the rental renewal rates. But could it get to the point, Rose, where we actually look at it and say, you know what? I appreciate you being here for 5 years. Your rents right now is 1,500. I appreciate it. Why don't we lower it to 1,475? We can. Typically, the renter is going to be the one that asks for that, to be honest with you. But it's a great question. I don't think that we're there yet for most of our properties or nearly all of them, but um, when they're trying to build like 10,000 homes off, off east of I-75, and you're having like housing developments or apartment communities in North Fort Myers and a newer office off US 41 and hundreds of apartments going up, that time unfortunately is going to come unless a lot of people move into our area. So, I hope that answers your question, Rose.
Brian has a question in the chat there, Michael, if
Okay,
you
let
see
me
it.
see. Let me see what we have. That Brian's chat question is. Thank you, Brian, for being here. Yes, do we have relationships with housing agencies to locate tenants? Absolutely. So we actually work with people like Lee County, the largest employer, which is the healthcare system. We have people that have actually even referred us properties to manage as well as renters. Okay, we also work with Lee County school system. So we even tried to work at having teachers that are coming from out of the area to teach. So we've had people that way. We work with them, trying to get them situated near like schools and stuff like that, whether it's Lehigh or Fort Myers. So absolutely. So for us, some of the private agencies like Chico's and that might be a little bit harder to get into because it's a private company. But anything public, we do work with. And like I said, we've I think and Parish I think knows this, but we actually rented a property with a like to a veteran recently, and so any organization that we think that is going to give us a good quality person, we'd be happy to work with. So absolutely, that's important. And by the way, just on that point, sometimes when people are going to agencies, they are not looking online for stuff. They're going to the agency and saying, "What do you have for $1,000 a month?" Or $1,500 a month, and so it's up to that agency to have a good relationship with us. Like we've worked with HUD for 35 years, so HUD knows us, very, very well. So they'll sometimes call and ask us if we have anything, that sort of thing. So just depending on how busy they are. And obviously things are always changing with organizations, whether it's HUD and funding and that sort of stuff. So, but great question, Brian. Yes, we work with as many agencies that we can, public or even private. Great question. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen? And great to have a lot of people on. And I know, Chris, you have a final question, so that's great. And anything else before we leave? And then, Chris, I'll take your question, offline.
Okay.
Anything else, guys? All right. Well, I hope this has been, like I said, a great use of your time. I hope that you understood a lot about what we do here at Red Fortress. If you're not a client of Red Fortress, great to have you as well. And hopefully all these tips will help you get into the mindset of the renter, some of the tips to help you do things online or offline, and again, to screen your tenant the right way. So kind of try to create a whole bunch of ideas in there, which we use at Red Fortress. And for the rest of you, have a great night. And Chris, go ahead. I'll be happy to take your question now.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And I wanted to say that I'm a client and a very happy one. I want to thank you all for your support.
Thank you.
Everything has been just very professionally handled, and I can't complain at all. Don,
Thank you.
I've been working with Don Sapp. He's been very good to work with, and he's always really, really on top of things.
Thank you.
And just again, I'm really happy with your service, and don't intend to go anywhere at all.
Thank you.
Very happy.
Great.
A couple of questions. First, I'm out in, and I ask this out of ignorance. I'm out in Southern California, so earthquakes are a problem. Hurricane season is another, and that's your turf.
Right.
Being that hurricane season is coming up, of course, everybody has hurricane shutters. My condo has hurricane shutters as well. Is this a requirement by the tenant to put these up during a hurricane, or is this onus on you to send somebody out, for example, to put these up for the tenant?
It's a great question. I'm actually going to be doing a video in hopefully by the end of June on this very topic. So the issue, if you have a condo that has, let's just say that you have window coverings, like you've got the metal ones, you've got the mesh,
Uh-huh.
a lot of different ones. It can go a couple of different ways. Sometimes the renters don't mind putting them up because in a way they're protecting their own materials and their
Their
own
own property
lifetime,
too.
right?
Yes.
Other times they're like, well, no, like I didn't rent the property for me to, get into construction and do all this sort of thing. So there's a couple of different things. One, to what extent do you think that the property is at risk? So, like for instance, Chris, let's just say that yours is on the third floor as an example. Well, okay, granted we had Ian, but like a third floor is probably not going to get flooding, right?
Mhm.
And if
Right.
you've held your property or your condo for a number of years, say a decade plus, and that you've gone through Ian, you've gone through Irma, like I have. You're looking at things and you're like, well, nothing really happened. So you
Mhm.
might be a little bit more like, not that you're testing fate, but you might be like, okay, I'm not going to get flooded. I've been through a couple of category fives before. You
Right.
know what? If the renter doesn't want to do it, no harm, no foul. But you can also say the renter doesn't want to do it. You can also have somebody put them up, and most of the renters will appreciate that. I haven't heard of a renter saying no, don't put them up because it's dark in there. And it is
Right.
dark. Okay, so
Sure.
like there is a lot of people that haven't been through hurricanes, just like I haven't been through an earthquake, so I can't really relate.
Right.
But hurricanes, right? Like if you put those up, it is dark in the house.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
my question to you is that it can go either way. Normally, our property manager would talk with them. We get feedback from the renter, like, "Hey, I'm getting ready to leave," or "I'm going to put them up," or "What do you want me to do?" And then we give them guidance. And since we've been through several in the last couple of years,
Yeah.
we're going to communicate with the renters and then get some direction, and then obviously talk with you as the client.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
good.
absolutely.
I'm on a ground unit, so with regard to flooding, fortunately the HOA covers that too. and I do have landlord insurance that would cover that as well. So I was actually concerned too with, actually the windows. By not putting up the shutters, of course, that makes you a little more vulnerable. So great, thank you. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. And
I don't want to tie you guys up forever, but a couple of question about so on Redfin and Zillow, if you were to look up my unit, for example,
Mhm.
they have like very, very old pictures on that. And now, of course, I totally understand you guys don't have control over that, but I know
Sure.
that a lot of people do go to these sources to see, okay, well, hey, what's available and it's free, you could get right online. But with my condo, they have very, very old pictures that are very unflattering. Uh,
Okay.
so I was just kind of curious if Red Fortress has it, because you mentioned in your video today
Mhm.
about the importance of having photos that are appealing to people.
Appealing and accurate, right? And
Yeah.
accurate, sure. Absolutely.
So I was just curious as to whether or not anything could be
Absolutely.
done about that
Oh,
or if that could change
sure.
or
Well, I'm going to have Parrish look into it because he works with the property managers a lot, and then we'll look at it. Absolutely, and
okay.
that's in sometimes, like for instance, um, I'll give you an example for a single family home where we might take a photo where it's during it's during say the winter time, so the grass doesn't look quite as great.
Right.
So there's things like that that sometimes the photos are dated, but we try to get the best picture at the time. But sure, absolutely, and we'll be happy to look into it because we want to make sure that the photos look good and they're accurate. Most
Okay, I
important. Sure,
appreciate that. That's
absolutely.
great. That's very, very helpful.
I will take a look online versus what's loaded up into our system. And then if we can do something about it, I'll get with Don so we can snap some other shots from
Great,
there.
Parrish. I appreciate that very much.
No problem.
Thank you.
And I'm done. Thank you very much for staying over. And I appreciate all your help.
My pleasure. Well, just for the people that are still here and that, I plan on doing this a bit more. I think some of the topics that I've dealt with as a landlord, like insurance and some of the ways that we can get things under control, I plan on doing it for a lot of our clients, not just the general public, but specifically for our clients. So look for that. And like I said, I do mean it. If you want me to address a certain topic that you find interesting, chances are other of our clients want it as well. So like hurricanes, I'm getting ready to talk about how many we've had, different aspects to it, what you should look at as a client, like storm surge. The storm surge always happen. When might it happen? That sort of thing. So this way, for instance, when you hear that, the news media is talking about how the state of Florida is going to be wiped out, which is what they always talk about. I know.
Right.
I'm going to try to pierce through that hyperbole and say, no, here's really what you should be looking for from more of a landlord property manager side of things and scientific research. So I'm going to be working on that one too, Chris. So thank you for bringing that up. It's
Great.
been on my
Sure.
mind, and I've been doing some research into it as well. So I'll probably do that in a video. But again, some of these Zoom sessions we'll be working on maybe I can't say a monthly basis, but maybe a quarterly basis with our clients to bring up stuff like insurance and things that you guys might find very interesting to save money on. So.
Excellent. Because insurance is another topic for another day.
For another day, exactly.
Great.
Absolutely. I hear you,
Well,
Chris.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Appreciate your time.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you guys
Good
soon.
night.